Alright, you ready to do some review? I'm going to do an exercise that you've had already for a review analysis. This is from Serse by Handel, and what we're mainly up to here is getting down to our functions below. So let me put in some Roman numerals and then we can put our functions below them. Alright, so I'm going to start here with a 1 chord. And remember that if you got a suspension like this, you don't want to try and include the suspended note, in this case the F, in the chord. The chord tone comes later. So look at the rest of those notes and see that you've got a 7 diminished 6, or an F. That's got to resolve back to a tonic, and it does. And then we've got root position, chord on 4, first inversion on 2 and 1. I hope you can get the chords right off of that. That's 4, 7 diminished, 6, and 1. Okay. If you listen first for cadences and points of arrival, that is really helpful because then you'll know where your phrase model will have to arrive. So we have to have a complete phrase model. Basically all the functions of the phrase model have to get us to this point, to this cadence, and it's nice to be able to just break up a big excerpt like this into phrases so that you can see it at that level. That means that anytime we get all those harmonic functions that play a part in the phrase model, within that we need to use the parentheses and show that as an embedded progression. So let me put T here in this line to show the extent of our tonic expansion. That makes sense because this chord is highly unstable. It's as usual, it's a 7 diminished 6. It's in first inversion, and doesn't really represent a change away from tonic. You're just elaborating tonic in some way. And so we're going to show this as a passing chord due to the bass motion. So 7 is never going to be able to do the job of closing a phrase, even though technically it belongs in that dominant category because it has the leading tone. But we're going to put a P there to show its embellishing function here. Whenever you assert that a tonic is stretched out over time and there's something that's not obviously tonic in function, you've got to explain why you're including that within the expansion. This one we're explaining with this P. Alright, next we go 4, 7, 1. Now that's predominant, dominant, and tonic, but we already know that the cadence is going to come up here. We're not there yet. There are a few reasons why we need these parentheses around it. Wait, let me put in the last chord. Its function is dominant. Okay, so this is a half cadence here we're asserting, and we're saying all this is a progression, yes, but it's embedded within a larger context. And that is not a cadence, that is. Now, some important things about this. The arrival on tonic, it doesn't have the weight that it would have if you had a root position 5. Root position 5 to 1, also in root position, creates stability. The root positionness of those chords gives you a solid foundation. Here, with inversion and also the fact that it's 7 diminished, an inherently unstable chord, you don't have that same sense of arrival back on tonic. It's a weaker motion into tonic, and that's part of why this is an embedded progression. Inversion plays a role, but also the fact that it's a substitute chord. This is not the dominant, this is a substitute for it, and that those two things work together here. Inversion and substitute for the dominant. One other thing I want to mention, well, let me mention two. One of them is the metrical position of this arrival on 1. The 1 comes on a very weak place within the measure, on beat 3. That's part of, it's a contributing factor, although it's not as important as the other two. Another thing, somebody mentioned in class, Brooke, you did that. You mentioned that there is a sense of motion through it, and I just want to point out the motion in the uppermost part and how it goes up by step from beat to beat. Yeah, there's some decorative accessories up here, but basically you're passing up, and the goal of the phrase is up here. You're just on your way with this tonic here. Okay, so a couple things we can see going on here that are very important for us to get. One of them is embellishing chords, and another is embedded progression. Let me press on a little bit. I'm going to show two different ways of handling this spot. Here's my preferred way. That is to say, I hear this pattern coming back again here. Go listen to that recording and check it out. There's a similarity between these two, so this almost sounds like an echo. You do it loud, you do it similarly soft. You're taking everything down a third, so it really is the same patterning, but you've just moved it to a new place. This is dominant and it's forte and needs to resolve, because this actually isn't a 5 anymore, although it does the same function. It's a 7. They work together and resolve here. There's great intensity, there's resolution. So I'm going to show it this way: dominant resolving to tonic. Then we do it again, and this time I'm going to show it's a 7. I'm going to show the 7 as passing. I didn't leave very much room up there, but there's a P. Should be underneath that 7 to show that it's on its way down to this F. So the bass, A, G, F. Passing motion. There's another way. Let me just show that one too. You could say, you know, all this, I got that up in the wrong place, but I'm trying to make room for myself here to show another way to do it. Another way to do it would be to do this. Okay, that's a little clearer. So scratch these and just take a look at these two options. Here's our first option with dominant changing to tonic, and tonic lasting through this passing chord. Another way to do it is to say, hey, this is all dominant, all the way to a tonic here. Okay, now this, let me show you what this would entail. If you put dominant all this way, then I can't say that this is a change to tonic anymore. I'm saying that this change to tonic is part of a dominant expansion. I have to explain that somehow. So what's the function of this chord? Well, if it's embellishing, you can use the root motion, the bass motion. It's descending down by step to label it. That's passing motion, so I can put a P there. Okay, now both are possible, to view this as a real change to tonic or to view it as passing motion within the dominant. I want to say they're both okay, but I prefer one over the other. I prefer the one up above, where it's dominant really giving way to tonic, because I hear this as needing resolution here, and then we do it again with passing chord now, needing resolution over there. And because of that feeling of resolution coming, I don't want to just say, okay, we're continuing with the dominant. I want to show that it's resolved, and then the tonic is sort of in charge for the rest of those 3 bars. Okay, so that's a real judgment call there. All right, now I am going to. This is a tricky spot in here because this does something that you just don't see very much at all. Let's see, what is this chord? This is a 1, 6, 5. That's one weird thing right there. To see 1, 6, 5, it truly is a major 7th chord. It's a 1, 6, 5. It's not applied, or else you'd have a flat 7. You don't have a flat 7. You just have this passing motion. So the weird thing is that you very seldom see 2 moving to 1. But this is a unique context because the 1 is really changing into something that's on its way somewhere. Now, let's see where it goes. So that's a 4. This is a 3, 6. And, okay, I want to talk about this next one. Let's get some of these chords in here, and I want to stop on this one. I've just been sort of writing them in, but now I want to stop for a moment because I see one of our main topics, secondary chords, secondary dominant, secondary leading tone chords. Here we have a B natural, and that should just alert you to the fact that something special is going on. It should be B flat, it's B natural, you've raised it. So, Once Handel raises that note, you should think that's probably a leading tone. And after noodling around with that neighboring motion, it does resolve. It goes up here to the C. All right, so if that is a leading tone, it's either the root or the chordal third. It's a root if it's a 7 chord, 7 of something. If it's a chordal third, it would be 5 of something. Remember that there are two options there. Now, this kind of gives it away here because you've got, it's a triad. It's 7 diminished 6 of 5 that follows it. Okay? Use that accidental to your benefit. You know you can't use a diatonic label because you've got to show that it's outside the key. Now, if the figures were all the way precise about this moment, it would actually show this, because that C is suspended and then resolves to the chord tone. Okay, now that we got that figured out, let's show the cadence. C, D, F, that's another 4, 5, 1. Okay, working from the end. This is the final cadence. So predominant, dominant, tonic is a no-brainer there. Full-fledged member of the phrase model, bringing closure, bringing the cadence, no parentheses. But here we have 5 to 1, and we've got inversion going on there before it ends. And notice that you got scale degree 5 up here too. These are things that keep it from sounding like you've really resolved. You need to get down to a more stable scale degree before it feels like you're done. Inversion also undermines closure. So when we have this dominant tonic motion, we know we're going to need a parenthesis there. Now where's the predominant in this? I would like to back up pretty far. I'm going to back up here. That 4 is pretty prominent. And so I'll write predominant under it. And then I've got to explain this 3 chord, which never does a predominant function. But we have options here. Let me show. Let me just explain this first. So what we're doing is we're saying with this symbol, the 4 and the 7 of 5 are both chords that push you into the dominant. They get you prepped for the dominant's arrival. In the midst of that, we have a 3-6 chord, which, sometimes it can do tonic jobs, sometimes it can do dominant jobs. But here, we're looking at the bass motion, seeing the passing motion going on there in between scale degrees 4 and 6. And so the P makes good sense in this case. I mentioned that there might be another possibility too. You could think of it as dominant. Now I don't think I'm going to go for this, but what if you said, let's see. Okay, if you went this route with it, you'd say the predominant gives way to a dominant function. Notice it is scale degree 5 in the bass. If you take a 3 chord and put it in first inversion, you get scale degree 5 in the bass, so it's very close to a dominant. Instead of the 5 in the key of F, instead of 5 we're getting one note different. It's kind of like add 6 to a dominant chord. So you can think of it as dominant, but in this context, I'm not going to like it. Because it's in such a weak metrical position, it's hard to hear a big significant change like that, predominant to dominant right there at that spot. We also need, if we go with that, we also have to say that's a neighboring chord there. Okay, and then comes this mess here where you've got what I'm going to have to call a passing chord, the 2 in there. Again, that's very weird to have a passing chord that's a 2. 2s usually do not go to 1. This line is really all to say that, hey, this is tonic going on over here. Okay, so we've got tonic, expanded, predominant. I'm going to cross that out, go with this one. Predominant all the way to here, and then show that is embedded. Then my real cadence comes up. Well, there, I hope that was helpful.